the unbearable whiteness of being on college campuses, and why no one is interested in redressing this kind of bias. Next on the Campus Roundup. Hi, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is the Campus Roundup at the College Fix. Our top story segment this week focuses on campus bias against white males. A recent College Fix article entitled "Wake Forest University Bias Response Team Refuses to Act After White Conservative Student Harassed." This is helping keep attention on a long instance of campus injustice at Wake Forest. To talk about his reporting on this story, I'm joined by Anthony Palumbo, the executive director of the Wake Forest Review. Anthony, we are witnessing across American campuses an all-out attack, it seems, on white males, a phrase that is actually used as a racial slur in many instances. Tell us more about the Ryan Wolf saga, who he is, and what happened at Wake Forest University.
Well, thank you so much for having me on today, Dr. Duke. So the way that this issue kind of started is one of the more liberal institutes on campus actually reached out to us and asked us to host a panel. And there was some banter back and forth based on some of the students on the panel and some of the students who had planned on protesting the panel. And the panel was simply about the future of the GOP, nothing super political at all. It was around the time of the election, and this kind of allowed for some toxic words to be said online. And I think that everyone has seen the image of Ryan and his face photoshopped on the cracker. And actually, there was a lot of banter online on Twitter before this incident. And then at the actual panel, one of the students gave Ryan a box of saltine crackers. And kind of from there, I spoke with Ryan a little bit, and he was really initially hesitant to come out and kind of, tell his story to someone and go really on the record after it, because he had been very nervous about his relationship with the university, his relationship with students on campus. And, finally, there had been more issues that had happened on campus that he kind of saw this as a time, I would like to go forward and I'd like to kind of tell my story and get it out there.
So right about the time, to clarify, of the 2016 presidential election, you guys on campus hosted basically a forum on the future of the Republican Party. This became absolutely politicized simply because you were having a discussion and students who were protesting didn't like Donald Trump, didn't like the GOP, were starting to say worse and worse things about it, were starting to protest the event itself. And at one point they went so far as to target Ryan Wolf specifically. Among other things, they called him all sorts of names. They reputed all sorts of ill intent to his actions. And they actually photoshopped his picture on a number of crackers. Cracker, of course, being a rather alarming slur against white males that has a long history. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's very right. I mean, it didn't just really stop. It wasn't just Ryan Wolf, too, that they were, targeting. They were targeting the other individuals on the panel. They even targeted me at one point on the panel. I was actually moderating. And at one point, they told me that I was being a racist because I wasn't calling on the right people. So this was kind of a really hostile environment that was, really started with this online stuff before the panel and these things that they called them on Twitter.
What's it like, being a white male yourself, having to report on these kinds of issues on a campus where there seems to be a double standard with how white people are treated when they complain about harassment?
It's tough. I'm not gonna lie. You are called all sorts of names. You're seen as being someone that, is just being racist and isn't really thinking about people. And it's honest, it's tough. I think that now we're finally getting some recognition for, doing stuff on campus. It is tough. And, on Twitter, I've been called terrible things since this incident. And, to be honest, I just wrote the story. I didn't really do much more than write the story and work on the journalistic aspect of it. Ryan was the one that was discriminated against, and I'm still, every day there's professors that I think are looking at me differently. There's administrators that I think are looking at me differently, and it's a lot different than it ever used to be.
Well, we know that the university investigated this incident, and they concluded they were going to do nothing. In fact, the dean actually told Ryan that he ought to drop the complaint because to follow up on the complaint would make things worse for him. What did that mean?
He was telling Ryan straight up that, because Trump was elected, that is a reason for these students to act the way they're acting and to speak to you the way they're speaking. I think the most important thing for us is to remember that, think about if this was a little bit of a reverse situation. Think about if this was Ryan who was doing something and these were the other students who had went to the dean about this incident. Would he tell them that, because Trump won the election, that they should forget about it? I don't know. You kind of have to ask yourself, again, like we've been saying, there is this double standard in the way that he's handling these cases. And if he's letting politics get in the way of handling a judicial case, that's when I think you have a major issue.
Right, and potentially a really big lawsuit. Last question I want to ask you in a couple of seconds here is, this happened back in 2016. The story that you wrote came out in the following year, and then this year you re-updated the story for the College Fix. Just talk a little bit about the timeline and about all of this, and why is it so important that we keep attention on this issue now?
So so just to clarify what you said, so we broke this story last week. I have known about this story for quite some time and what happened for quite some time, but Ryan did not want to go on the record and did not want to have anything published until recently, because he is going to be a second semester senior and he is leaving the university, and he does feel like, it's time for Wake Forest to kind of finally, handle things the proper way. But like you said, the initial incident did happen in 2016, right before the election. I had spoken with Ryan. I kind of went to Ryan and said, "Hey, look, I think it is finally time for you to tell your story to the world and let people kind of know what's happening." And he thought for a while. He thought for all Christmas break and pretty much all the first month of this year. And finally, he said, "I think you're right. I think it's time. Let's go forward with this." And here we are, a few weeks later, and the story is broken big.
To hear more stories like this one, follow the College Fix on Twitter and Facebook. Anthony Palumbo, thank you so much for your time today. Time now for Talking Campus, our weekly discussion with members of the College Fix editorial team. Today I'm joined by College Fix assistant editor Daniel Payne for a conversation about campus bias against white males. Daniel, the College Fix has compiled many informative articles over the last few years highlighting the almost no-holds-barred venom directed at white male students. The level of malevolence in these attacks is really going up, in large part because universities refuse to treat with this kind of discrimination with anything like the concern and diligence they would if the complainants were actually minority students. Daniel, talk a little bit about this double standard. Where is it coming from, and why in the world are we tolerating it on college campuses?
Yeah, it's very pervasive. You see it at most every university or college that you look at. There's going to be some form of discrimination or bias towards white men. The most recent one that we reported on late last week was an incident at Wake Forest University where a white male student was harassed and was referred to as a cracker. Some students pasted his face onto a picture of a saltine. And he went to his school's, bias review team and attempted to lodge a complaint, and they waved it off and said, we're not going to pursue this. So in this instance where a student was really pursuing a justice in the face of a genuine act of discrimination, the very campus apparatus that was designed to address these types of acts gave him no help whatsoever. So you see really that kind of bias just everywhere you look on campuses, and it's becoming a problem that's just growing in recent years.
Yeah, and the thing that really is alarming about this is because this individual is white and male, and this is a whole nother discussion, but it needs to be thrown out here. White is such a odd term to use, because if you happen to be white and homosexual, for instance, then you're protected. If you happen to be white and transgender, and a woman transgendering to a male, well, you're protected. It's a very specific kind of thing. Also, the other thing that is really troubling about this individual white male, he was verbally slurred. White males in general were verbally slurred. This went worse than that, though. There were actually images done and published at the university to attack him particularly. This seems to check off every single box for bullying and harassment. Can you talk a little bit on a broader sense, Daniel, about what is the white male problem here, and why is it okay to scapegoat and stereotype this way when in every other instance we're warned against those things on college campuses?
I mean, I think, obviously the correct answer is it's not okay, and it's never been okay. But the reason that people think it's okay on these campuses is that it's the culture in so much of university life that every other demographic and every other combination of demographics deserves to be protected and sheltered because of so-called historical injustices. And the only demographic that is seen as having this sort of villain status is white men. And of course, obviously, nobody can deny white men have done some bad things throughout history, but everybody's done bad things throughout history. The idea that white men should be the only targets and that everybody else should be sheltered from any criticism, or really that anybody should be engaging in this kind of invective and bias whatsoever, it's really just a product of campus identity politics that have really sunk their teeth into just about every level of university politics and university life.
Well, it is amazing, isn't it, that in an era where we are willing on campus to actually censor the First Amendment to protect kids from having to hear anything that might offend them, it's just odd to me that we allow a slur like cracker. And you think about it, right? Cracker as a slur goes back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s during the civil rights struggle. It was the equivalent of the N-word in many respects, as it was used in black vernacular. And a word with that kind of legacy of hatred and all the things that are bound up with it, the fact that you have kids on campus making pictures and projecting the face of another student's image on that cracker and sending it out to all sorts of different networks is really, really crossing a line here. And so you mentioned that it's part of the problem. It's part of a big problem we have. But I ask this question. If it's not okay to be white, if there's something inherently wrong with being both white and male, what exactly are these kids supposed to do about it? And why would they just simply roll over and not fight back?
Yeah, I think that you find that the solution that's proposed on so many campuses is for white men to debase themselves, to sort of flagellate themselves and declare themselves guilty and sorry, and that they're going to take every step they can to remedy the historical wrongs that they're guilty of because of the color of their skin. Well, obviously, most everybody who's presented with that kind of choice will reject it. It's ridiculous. So you are going to see some pushback from white men who've done nothing wrong, who are perfectly good people, and who are naturally sick and tired of being told that they're the devil incarnate. So the solution that's most often put forward is an absolutely untenable one. And what you're going to see in its place is just people putting their foot down about this really disgusting political correctness.
Be sure to stay up on all the latest news and information from the College Fix editors by joining us on all of our social media platforms. The mounting number of articles at the College Fix and other news sites demonstrate that campus scapegoating of the so-called white male is escalating from semester to semester. In alarmingly short order, what started as finger-pointing at white males has morphed into stigmatization. Stigma has given rise to bigotry. Bigotry is now transformed into outright discrimination. And we are already witnessing segregation, bullying, and theorized violence against this anathematized subgroup of white males. Worse is to come unless sanity is reestablished in the bedlam that has become our college campuses. What is our fix here? 1. Start applying logic. Let's parse the term white male. We use that phrase, white male, to talk about anybody from a Western or a European or an American or a North American culture, from Aristotle to Copernicus to Shakespeare to Duke Pesta. The idea that this one phrase can encompass all of that is bizarre and absurd. And in fact, we've come to use the term white male almost like Nazis used the word Jew in Hitler's regime. It means anybody we don't like for any reason. It's not effective. Get rid of it. Number 2, let's give credit. If we're going to blame white males for the evils of the world, then blame them for those things in the world they had done well. Aristotle contributed a lot that needs saving. So have Copernicus and Shakespeare, not perhaps Duke Pesta, but the rest of them certainly have. Time to balance the score a little bit to make the scapegoating harder. Number 3, stop appropriating that which is unacceptable. Stop appropriating white culture if white culture is so bad. Progressives tell us that appropriating other people's culture is bad for any reason. So if white people are, and white males are as bad as you say they are, then put down your cell phones and a whole bunch of other things. Stop using computers, a whole bunch of other things that should be off limits to you if you want to be real social justice warriors and not hypocrites. And finally, number 4, seek scapegoats if you absolutely have to have them. I'd like to think in the year 2018 we're beyond scapegoating, but if progressives need scapegoats on college campuses, look for them in the behavior of individuals, not in the behavior of whole groups. That's how you avoid being racist yourself. And that's the final fix. I'm Dr. Duke, and we'll see you next time. For more videos and original articles, visit thecollegefix.com. And don't forget to like The College Fix on Facebook and follow on Twitter to receive your daily dose of right-minded news and commentary from across the nation.